fantastic. Some of you know me already, but many of you don't. I was a language arts teacher at Washington High School for 11 years. I left Washington High School about 3 years ago and went into real estate, which is my day gig, but I am also a writer. I've always been a writer. I graduated from the University of Iowa with degrees in journalism and mass communication and English, and I have been with SPT Theater for 7 years, and I've been writing for them and performing on their stage. For the last 2 years, I've co-produced a program called Nouveau Po Jam. How many of you have been to the Nouveau Po Jam? Anybody? Anybody? A couple of hands. Okay, you need to come to the next one. It'll be in May, all right? So, in all of these years, literature has been incredibly important to me. Storytelling and the power behind really interesting stories, right? When I left Washington High School, I knew that I was not leaving teaching. I knew that I was not leaving literature. And I knew that I was going to create my own opportunity to offer the community a way to engage in literature and the arts that is sort of like the classroom, but also not at all. So the hook is born out of that idea. Words, art, stories that engage, empower, and inspire. I added empower about 2 weeks ago because I think that that's really sort of what we strive to do. So the Hook is this organization which produces several different events, and I call them in my head sort of strands, right? And Art Loud is the flagship program for the Hook, and it consists of workshops that involve adults and people of all ages, in fact. It's open to high school students, it's open to college students, and any adult who wants to participate in the workshops. And they meet weekly, and then as they're meeting, they're creating literature. When I say literature, I'm talking specifically poetry that is meant to be performed on the stage, and storytelling. How many of you are familiar with the NPR podcast, The Moth? A few people, okay. So, So The Moth is one of the more famous examples of storytelling, right? Live storytelling, where you're telling real stories to a live audience. And there's a craft to it. Some people do it better than others. With Art Loud, we're there to help you figure out how to craft your stories, how to craft your poetry, so that it really works with a live audience. And in my time with SPT and with PoJam, I've seen that number one, there are an incredible number of artists in town who want to do something like what we're doing with PoJam, and there's not enough opportunity. There's also an incredible number of people in town who want to attend more of these events. Every single time we do something like SPT Theater, where they see some of the poetry, the monologues on stage, and then Nouveau PoJam, I have people come up to me and say, where else can we do something like that? I want to try something like that. And the Hook is designed to give people opportunities to try it. Let's see what we can come up with together. Art Loud is different in that it incorporates visual art and live music and also some dance. So I've got people like LD Kid who are sort of in my corner saying, hey, when you're ready to incorporate dance into what you're doing, let me know and I'm there, right? I can't find anything in Chicago, in Madison, in Iowa City, or in Des Moines that is doing something like that, incorporating live art with all of those different forms in one space, okay? Art Loud is scheduled to produce 6 live showcases per year, and then we've got the Right to Art here on the far left. That one is really important to me in terms of it hinges on the expectation of collaboration between artists. So often writers end up sitting in their own corners at home in the dark, you know, with maybe a candle burning and a glass of wine going, oh God, I gotta write another sentence. And with no support. Musicians sort of spend their time hanging out with other musicians, and artists do the same thing. Well, with the Right to Art, I'm taking 3 writers and 3 visual artists, and they're producing a set of work that is theme-based. Maybe it's about family, maybe it's about home and homelessness, or maybe it takes a more visual, artistic approach and it's about texture and line, right? So they're all working with a theme, and they produce work for about 3 months. And then the writers hand the writing off to the artists hand their artwork off to the writers, and then they create another set of work specifically inspired by the other's artwork. And then we have a live showcase. So that happens 2 times per year because those visual artists need a lot more time to really create that work, especially depending on their medium. Drop the Mic is maybe what you're most familiar with. How many of you have ever been to a poetry event, a performance poetry event? Let's ask that question first. That's fantastic. Usually I ask that question in town and it's maybe 3 people. So Drop the Mic is more of that traditional performance poetry in a coffee shop, in a wine bar, something like that. More casual, less orchestrated. This is you come and you share your literature with us. I keep focusing on poetry because that's what I do, but I want to make it clear that Drop the Mic is really for all writers. If you've got a piece that you're working on and you want to try to read it out loud to a live audience, let's give you the space to do that. And again, that's coming out of a lot of people telling me, I want to try something like this. They're Facebook messaging me, hey, I've got a piece that I'm working on. Can I read it somewhere? Well, yeah, let's get that started. The Youth Slam team, again, drawing from my experience as a teacher, the Youth Slam team is important to me because when I was a student at Washington High School, I loved writing, but I didn't love Shakespeare. And I didn't love William Carlos Williams. And I didn't write like either of those poets. I didn't even really write like Maya Angelou. I didn't write like Langston Hughes. There were no poets in those books that I felt like I could write, that my writing style sort of emulated at all. And it wasn't until I started watching Deaf Poetry on HBO where I was like, oh my God, yes! Thank you! Poetry gods, thank you. But because I felt disconnected from my school, disconnected from the subject that I loved even, and disconnected from my community, I kept thinking, I've got to go somewhere to college where there is, in a town where there is something like this, what I imagine happening in these coffee shops, right? Well, I went to University of Iowa because that's where you go when you're a writer. And they didn't even have anything quite like this. And then I graduated from the University of Iowa and thought, I'm going to go to Chicago where they have something like this. I'm going to go to Minneapolis where they have something like this. But I stayed. Because I stayed because of the same reasons so many of us stay. Family, right? Personal circumstance, job. Even some of us who think, I'd like to get the heck out of here and go to Denver, Colorado. But while I've been here, I've grown to really love this community. And that love for this community has come from my involvement with the arts. And it's the same kind of attachment to a community that I really tried to form in my classroom, getting those students to connect with each other through the arts. And how can I get them to connect with the city then through the arts, so that they're not like me in high school and then in college going, how can I get the heck out of here? What's my first ticket out, right? And so the Youth Slam team meets weekly, and it's open to 8th through 12th graders. And we're currently meeting at the Cedar Rapids Public Library. And it's an environment where they're really working together to build writing skills, speaking skills, communication skills that ultimately makes them even more solid in the workforce when they eventually get there. And I'll have a treat for you with some of those 2 young ladies sitting there who will perform their work for us. It's also a community for the pragmatic writer. As one of my board members, Liz Lenz, said one time, we need to build that community of writers in Cedar Rapids. And I know that Iowa City is doing really interesting things down there, but there are a lot of reasons why we need to also foster that community here, right? And so with networking events and conferences, the big vision is also festivals. We're really creating an environment where writers can connect with one another, but then also other artists, musicians and visual artists can connect with one another. Ultimately, the hook for me with all of these different strands is created in a way where every single person in this community can find something here that they're drawn to, something here that they can be hooked into, right? And it's taking stakeholders in the community and giving them an opportunity to also listen to people whose voices and perspectives and experiences sometimes go underrepresented in our community. I don't know how often I walk into a room and I'm the only one, right? On the SPT stage, and sometimes looking out into that audience, for instance, I'm the only one. I'm the only African American in that room. And it's important for me that the hook creates cultures in all these different aspects where everyone is invited to the table and everybody's voice can be heard and respected. As part of my mission with the Nubo Pojam, I always make sure to include at least one youngster, and by youngster I mean a high school student, a college student. And so in October, Zahara was that youngster. At that time, she was 16?
Yes.
16. She was 16. She is a junior this year, and was 16 at the time, is now turned 17. By now has turned 17. Zahara and Alexi are friends at Jefferson High School. And right after the Nubo Pojam in October, Alexi contacted me and said, "Hey, I hear you do this performance poetry thing," more or less. And I said, "Yes." And she said, "I want to start a youth group." And I said, "Well, actually, it's being started, and you're the first one. How does that sound?"